moving on their own, unexplainable noises, and sudden violent outbursts. Her terrified parents seek help from the church, and two priests take on the dangerous task of confronting the demon. What unfolds? The Exorcist tells the story of a young girl who becomes possessed by a powerful demon. It begins innocently, with strange occurrences in her home. Objects moving on their own, unexplainable noises, and sudden violent outbursts. Her terrified parents seek help from the church, and two priests take on the dangerous task of confronting the demon. What unfolds is a terrifying battle of faith, courage, and evil. A story that shocked audiences and became a classic of horror cinema. But what many viewers don't realize, this terrifying tale was inspired by a real case. In the next segment, we'll uncover the true events that gave birth to The Exorcist. Watch the full story on our channel, and don't forget to subscribe if you dare face the truth. The Exorcist begins not in Washington, D.C., but in the deserts of Iraq. In the opening scene, an elderly priest oversees an archaeological dig where ancient relics are uncovered. Among the findings lies a small, sinister statue, the face of Pazuzu. The camera lingers on it, hinting that something ancient and malevolent has awakened. But Pazuzu is not an invention of Hollywood. In fact, he comes directly from Mesopotamian mythology. To the Sumerians and Assyrians, Pazuzu was one of the most feared spirits. He was often depicted with the wings of a vulture, the claws of a lion, the stinger of a scorpion, and a grotesque, distorted head. Archaeological discoveries confirm that Pazuzu was worshipped, or perhaps dreaded, as a ruler of the underworld. He was tied to plague, famine, and disaster, a spirit carried by the wind, capable of bringing both life and destruction. Yet here is the twist. Despite his terrifying image, Pazuzu was not always seen as purely evil. In fact, ancient people often invoked him for protection. Amulets bearing his face were placed in homes to guard pregnant women and children against other demons. To them, Pazuzu was a necessary evil, dangerous, but capable of keeping even worse forces at bay. It is this complex and ambiguous spirit that the filmmakers chose as the true face of evil in The Exorcist. But in reality, Pazuzu was less the devil himself, and more a dark guardian who stood at the boundary between protection and destruction. This 1949 case, carefully documented by priests and whispered about in medical circles, became the seed that inspired William Peter Blatty to write The Exorcist. The terrifying story of Roland Doe was transformed into the tale of young Regan on screen. But unlike the film, which showed Pazuzu as the great antagonist, the real boy's torment had no clear face, only unexplained phenomena that continue to divide skeptics and believers to this day. And these beliefs were not just abstract ideas. Archaeologists have uncovered real Pazuzu amulets and figurines, many of which survive today. The story of The Exorcist may have terrified millions, but behind the film lies a real case, one far stranger and far more tragic than Hollywood ever showed. For decades, the possessed child at the heart of the story was known only by the pseudonym Roland Doe. But in 2020, Skeptical Inquirer revealed his true identity. Ronald Edwin Hunkeler. Born in 1935, he grew up in a middle-class family in Washington, D.C. What the world didn't know was that this boy would one day become the inspiration for The Exorcist. As a teenager, Ronald was devastated when his beloved aunt, who had introduced him to spiritualism and the Ouija board, passed away. Trying to reach her, he began using the board alone. Soon after, the strange events began. Scratching noises echoed through his bedroom walls. Furniture slid violently across the floor. His bed shook uncontrollably. Religious objects trembled when he was near. At times, red welts appeared on his skin, spelling out words like Saturday, or even Louis, seemingly directing the family to St. Louis, Missouri. Doctors and psychologists found no explanation. His Lutheran pastor, Luther Schulze, wrote letters describing how chairs moved on their own, and how holy relics were thrown across the room without anyone touching them. Finally, desperate, the family turned to the Catholic Church. Father William Bowdern, a Jesuit priest, led the exorcisms. Over 3 months, more than 20 sessions were performed. 14 witnesses signed accounts of what they saw. They claimed the boy spoke in guttural voices, cursed in Latin, and displayed unnatural strength. Holy water seemed to burn him. Scratches appeared on his chest and limbs as if carved by unseen hands. In one chilling entry from March 1949, Father Bowdern described how relics were ripped from the altar and how the boy suddenly fell into a trance as pounding sounds echoed like marching soldiers. By April, the climactic struggle took place at a Catholic hospital in St. Louis. After violent screaming and thrashing, the boy suddenly grew calm. He opened his eyes, and the priests declared the demon gone. The possession, they wrote, had finally ended. The boy survived and lived a surprisingly ordinary life. Ronald Hunkler grew up to become an engineer at NASA, contributing to the Apollo space missions, and even helping develop heat-shielding technology for the space shuttle. Yet privately, he lived in constant fear. According to those close to him, he worried endlessly that someone would discover his secret, that he was the real Exorcist boy. On Halloween, he would even flee his home, afraid of being recognized, afraid that the past would never let him go. He retired from NASA in 2001, and in May 2020, just shy of his 86th birthday, Ronald Hunkler passed away. To the public, he was a brilliant engineer. But to history, he will forever remain the boy whose nightmare gave birth to The Exorcist. Whether through the chilling exorcism of a boy in 1949 or the ancient Mesopotamian demon known as Pazuzu, The Exorcist was never just a work of fiction. It was a story born from history, myth, and fear. A reminder that some horrors are far older and far more real than Hollywood could ever invent. This episode is part of our Exorcism series, where we uncover the darkest rituals and the spirits said to be driven out by faith. In the next chapter, we will continue our journey into the terrifying world of exorcisms, exploring another case that still haunts believers and skeptics alike. If you want to walk further into the shadows with us, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. Do you believe that these demons are real, or are they simply reflections of our deepest fears?